a great day, guys.
TMD.
There we go.
Did you have Canadian flags? You did. Thank you.
Good afternoon. It is Saturday, January the 31st, and live from Copenhagen is Ken Harbaugh and Denver Riggleman, who have just participated in the no words silent protest of Danes marching by the United States Embassy filled with many veterans. We were talking just a few moments before we got on. This was a powerful experience for both Ken and Denver. Good afternoon, guys. How are you?
Doing good. Thanks
Awesome.
for having us, Steve.
Well, take us inside. What happened today in Copenhagen?
It was an extraordinary event, start to finish. Over 10,000 Danes gathering to not only express their bewilderment at the statements of our president and the decision of the embassy, this story just broke, to remove flags that were planted across the sidewalk from the embassy in public flower gardens honoring Danish war dead. They had the names of the Danish soldiers killed in Afghanistan and Iraq on the flags, and they were still removed. That generated such outrage in this country that the name of the protest couldn't be called anything else but no words. They literally could not articulate how frustrated, how angry they were at the actions of the Trump administration. But they made a point in every conversation we had today to say they're not mad at Americans. They love America. That partnership goes back generations. Veteran after veteran told us stories, and I'm talking about Danish veterans, of Americans coming to their aid. Obviously, that crescendoed after 9/11 when they came to our aid. The only time in the history of the NATO alliance that Article 5 has been invoked was when NATO came to aid the United States when we asked for help. And that long march from the Castel, the Citadel, the fort overlooking the entrance to Copenhagen Harbor, a historic fort with the cannon emplacements, down to the U.S. Embassy, was one of the most moving, emotional experiences I have ever had as a veteran.
Yeah, and there's a picture, I think, that you have of a almost 80-year-old veteran of the Congo. He was telling me World War II stories. He goes, "I'm sorry, my English isn't very good. I was taught in the Congo," wow. Right, English. But he said something, he goes, "I'm not going to live much longer." There he is. He goes, "I'm not going to live much longer, but it's good to know that Americans still have my back." And I was walking with him, so I decided to walk the whole route with him. And I kept asking him, "Do you want me to help you carry the flag?" He goes, "No, that is my job." And he's almost 80, and the flag, I tell you, the wind was whipping, wind chill was 6 degrees. And to walk with those people, to have somebody who I would thought might be angry, enraged, he was a little stunned. I'm not going to lie. He goes, "Trump is bad for America. We want America back," which is incredible to hear, right? I mean, just from somebody, on the street, but that man right there, I think, represents the reason we were there today. Yeah.
Did you see anybody looking out from embassy windows?
No, the embassy staff and the ambassador, most of all, were hiding. Absolute cowards. And they had the gall, the ambassador had the gall to come out and make a statement without any mention of Donald Trump disparaging Danish contributions to our war effort in Afghanistan. He said, "We've never asked anything of the Danes." This is what President Trump said. "We've never asked anything of the Danes. They've never done anything for us. They stayed behind the front lines." If there's anything to apologize for, it might begin with replacing the flags, but it's the entire U.S. posture towards Denmark and towards Greenland. That's where the Danes need the real apology.
We were talking right before we started, and our friend Mary Corcoran told the story about you were bringing an American flag to the event and the response and the conversations that followed. Will you tell us a little bit about that?
I wish, Mary could say, talk about it too on camera, because for me, as soon as the American flag was seen when I first came out, people were looking at me like, "Who is this guy?" But it was interesting because I guess there was a bit of a ripple effect because all the Save America people right up front, if I may brag on this team a little bit, you talked about the embassy with their windows closed, nobody there. By the way, Steve, nobody was there. And it's incredible to me that they did not have a presence out there for what was happening.
None.
I'm sort of not going to say I'm stunned with this administration, but it gets to the point. It's not what you want to represent as an American. But everybody in the Save America movement was at the front, and they invited us there. And it's because we had the flags. We were brave enough to do it. And it got to the point, and I will tell you, and Ken told me and Mary, that at the beginning it seemed a little tense. But as we explained what we were doing there, not only to support NATO, but the Save America movement, the people that were there, the cameras. And if you think about the group that sent here, Steve, everybody that's here, that was the representation. That's all I saw really of American representation up front today. And so, yeah, I think the flag became something of a symbol of unity by the end. And we were at the end, and me and Mary were sitting by all the flags that were sitting there. People were coming up and thanking us and saying, it's so good to see the American flag here today. And the fact that you're here means everything to us. Now, you think about that, Steve. They've been denigrated, disrespected, and they're still, America will always be our friend. But you got to get Trump the hell out of there. It's pretty much the message, that we have there.
And the audience was the whole world. I mean, we were there to stand alongside our Danish brothers and sisters in arms. But to start with, this was the largest anti-Trump protest outside of the U.S. in history, I think. We've been hearing that again and again. And we felt that personally as reporter after reporter from the German news service. I talked to Swedish, Slovakian, lost count of the number of journalists I talked to from around the world who were, I think personally, I don't know about their news organizations, but personally, they were desperate to hear this message that there is a resistance that is powerful and growing more powerful by the day in the United States that both cares about what's happening at home and cares about its effect on the entire world.
I'm incredibly proud of the ad that this organization put together, a message from the American people to the Danish people that were advertising across Denmark digitally. And we're going to run a very aggressive campaign there that's going to put a spotlight on our loathsome, and I mean loathsome, ambassador. So our friends will be hearing more from us. Do you feel any shame as an American walking up to that event? And to me, I have never felt shame in my country during my life, but I am overwhelmed with a feeling of shame, while at the same time, I have a incandescent spirit of defiance that is continuing to grow. And these two opposing feelings, shame and defiance in this moment. And I wonder, and maybe you all feel differently about it, but talk about your emotions as an American, and specifically the both of you, veterans of the armed forces of the United States. Talk about the emotions you experienced today.
That's a hell of a question for me and Ken right now. So Mary and I were at the front with the flags. I had the little American flag. It was to a point, actually. We thought we were going to carry the big flag, Steve, but talking to the organizers, I think they even felt a little bit of a twinge that maybe that's not a great idea when they said carry the smaller flags. So I was looking there at the embassy when I turned around, Mary and I, when we were calling out the names of the 44 dead Danish soldiers, I looked up at the American flag on the embassy, and I had the same feeling of massive trepidation mixed with anger. That we are Americans, damn it. And why as Americans, everything that we've done and all the oaths that we've taken, putting ourselves in harm's way. Even today, right? Marching with these incredible people. Why am I looking at my American flag across the embassy and there's nobody there? There's nobody home. And I felt like we were really a bit alone. And it scared me a bit. Not scared like me wanting to run into the shadows, but scare me about what we represent in the future for the generations of the Danes and our NATO allies. And it scared my own feelings scared me a bit, because the anger was, I want my flag back. I want it back. And that's really, and I don't have to, I think, wax philosophical about this. It was literally trepidation, embarrassment, rage, but still this pride of being an American and knowing that somehow we were there. We could take back sort of the sanity of this country and maybe our soul a bit.
Yeah, I felt deep shame in my government, in the Trump administration's insults, because they trickle down, they cascade down upon us. We were holding the American flag, and people were looking sideways at us. But it hit me hardest as they read out the names. You might have to finish this for me, Denver. As they read out the names of the Danish war dead, as every single flag was replanted, because remember, the American embassy took them out, as the flags honoring the Danish war dead were replanted, and some of them were replanted by family members. A woman brushed past me in a bit of a hurry, and as someone pushed me aside, she said, "That's one of the wives." And she had to get through the barricades to get up there in time. And then I noticed who was planting the flags, and there were children holding flags in front of the U.S. Embassy, replanting them in honor of a fallen father or mother. And it's hard not to feel anything but shame in a moment like that. And the juxtaposition between those flags of honor planted in front of us and the American flag looming over them, it's going to be hard for me to process that, and it's going to take a while, having sworn my life to that flag at one point.
Talk about, if you will, I've taken the constitutional oath. It was a very meaningful experience in my life, and I viewed the taking of that oath to be a permanent oath. Talk about your oath and its importance in your life. Denver, you've taken it as a member of Congress. You've taken it as an Air Force officer. Ken, you've taken it as a naval officer. It's been a while since you guys have had the uniform on. The oath doesn't end when you take the uniform off, does it?
No. And it's something that I never thought we'd have to remind veterans of in the context of defending against their own government. But that's where we are right now. I remember thinking about that line, against all enemies, foreign and domestic, as kind of hyperbolic at the time. When could we possibly have to take up, well, I won't go there yet, but when would we possibly have to defend our nation against domestic enemies? But we have domestic enemies at the very heart of our government that are trying to undermine what we swore the oath to, that violate the Constitution as easily as they breathe, that make a mockery of the oath that we swore, and that by denigrating Danish war dead, they denigrate the service and sacrifice of every American who served alongside them.
We know when
Denver,
we take the oath, Steve.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Steve. No, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Denver.
I was just going to, I think, and I'm not trying to summarize Ken, but I'm going to. It's a lifetime obligation. It's that simple. It's a lifetime obligation. And, I took the oath as an enlisted troop, a commissioned troop. I've taken the oath as a congressman on the J6 committee. I took the oath. So it's been oath heavy for me, Steve. So, and it is a lifetime obligation that we're swearing allegiance not only to our Constitution, but there's a glue. There's something that holds us together with everybody that fights for the freedom of their countries.
The word domestic enemy of the Constitution. I have no discomfort whatsoever saying that Donald Trump is a domestic enemy of the American Constitution, that Pam Bondi is a domestic enemy, that Kristi Noem is a domestic enemy, that Pete Hegseth is a domestic enemy, that Stephen Miller is a domestic enemy of the Constitution. Does that give you any qualms?
None. None. I think when when you're not just your words but your actions betray the Constitution, that's defining enough for me.
You know, and Steve, as far as qualms, there's a complexity to this, and Ken and I have a bit of history when we're talking about veterans on either side of this fence. And I think what it comes down to is we're seeing people who are deliberately undermining everything we hold dear as far as our institutions, but the people they're radicalizing took the same oath that we did. And they're looking at us as the enemies that are domestic or foreign. And if you think about that, I think that's why we're at such a pivotal point in the history of our country, is that there seems to be this ambiguity or this inability to see what's right or wrong on either side of that oath. And my biggest fear as we go forward in these next 3 years is that the same people that took oaths like us will view us as the enemies and not the people that are deliberately destroying our institutions. And it could be very well said that there's another show somewhere on the far right that are saying the same thing about us right now. And I find it absolutely disturbing because I know we're right. And I know people are like, oh God, Dan, how could you know? Well, we know because we stand on the side of morality and sanity and goodness, but we also stay on the side of institutional law, right? And due process, and not destroying people's lives based on the color of their skin or the way that they're, that they're gendered, how they, gender themselves or how they actually self-identify. I mean, what the hell?
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that bothers me the most going forward.
Well, you know who else knows we're right? It's the people you just mentioned, Steve. It's Kristi Noem and Stephen Miller and Pete Hegseth. They know that they're on the wrong side of history. It's why they're panicking. The dilemma for me is it happens when I talk to those shock troops, the insurrectionists or the Proud Boys who are steeped in this mythology and this misinformation that is being paid for and cultivated by folks who actually know better. And those are the ones who have never been held accountable. It's the instigators, the people with those levers of power in the MAGA right who I think deserve our real contempt. And they do know who's right and who's wrong. But I think the signs of the panic setting in are because they realize that history's verdict is coming.
There is no question about who is in the right because there is an accumulation of evidence in the written words from George Washington to Thomas Jefferson to Lafayette and Madison and Adams through Kennedy and Roosevelt and Reagan and Obama in modern times. But the long history of the country makes clear that in this moment, who stands on the side of the Constitution. I will mess this quote up a little bit, I fear, but at the beginning of the Civil War, Ulysses Grant said there are but two parties in America now, traitors and patriots. And hereafter, I wish to be associated with the latter. And so for me, it's a great privilege to be associated with so many patriots that are making a stand. And while you are in Copenhagen and when you go out this evening, let the Danes know that across America today, there are hundreds of anti-ICE protests, 300 at last count.
Wow.
And these are spontaneous. People are rising up. They are coming into the streets. The schools in the city of Denver emptied yesterday, and high school kids and college kids took over the main boulevard, and you can see them marching with the signs. The American people are rising up, and the violence in Minnesota does not appear to be abating. While we see the moral rot of this administration, of our domestic enemies, being spilled out through the release of these Epstein files, we are in a fight that is not about right or left. It is not about progressive versus conservative or progressive versus centrist. It is about right versus wrong. And it is about appeasement and surrender versus standing up and fighting back. And that's the choice. neutrality, as Elie Wiesel said, never favors the oppressor. It never favors the victim, only the oppressor, only the oppressor. And so there is no neutral space anymore in America. By refusing to take a stand and sitting down, that is a stand, standing with the domestic enemy, standing with the oppressor. And so as these months unroll ahead, we're going to have some very, very difficult days. We're going to have more death. We're going to see more violence. We're going to see more government lawlessness. We will see insanity increase, but we will prevail. And I wonder, I've always had, during my experiences traveling around the world, a fresh perspective on America when I've returned. And I wonder how you feel about America through the experiences that you've had in Greenland, in Denmark. It always gives you a new view. And tell us about that view being shaped by this trip.
Steve, I guess we'll have to see how that plays out in the coming days as Denver and I come home and we readjust. But one of the lasting impressions for me is going to be the realization that the resistance to fascism is global. And people understand the centrality of America's role in the world, and that if America fails as a democracy, that failure is going to reverberate around the democratic world. I lost count of the number of people who came up to me today asking how we were, how I was, who talked about Minneapolis, who talked about the American brown shirts that have taken over the streets of a major American city. Remember, these are people who have dealt with this before. We have something we can learn from the European and Danish experience here. And I think Americans need to take that to heart when our allies, our closest friends in the world, are describing a government agency in the United States as America's brown shirts. We better pay attention.
You know, Steve, I was in a house, and Ken knows who it was, right on the water there in Greenland, right in Old Town Nook. And I get this feeling from Peter, who we were talking to in this house. It was this: they want their loved one back. That's it. They want us back. They want the people they love back, that beacon of democracy they talked about today. He said, you guys were always our big brother, which was an amazing statement, right? I mean, come on, Steve. I mean, we want our big brother back. I know. And I remember I was standing out talking to him after we were done. And he was looking across the water. And he goes, really, would the Americans come here to hurt us? They've been our friends our whole lives. I mean, so I think that, again, I would summarize the feeling is that they just want their loved one back.
They want their big brother back, and so we're going to have to kick Big Brother's ass in the United States. That's for sure. That's for sure.
Or that.
Or that. Last thoughts from you guys?
Yeah, still processing the fact that we were invited to walk at the head of the largest anti-Trump rally overseas in history as Americans, I think should remind folks that the sentiment here isn't anti-American, it's anti-Trump. And it is possible to be proud of your country and fiercely loyal to what it truly represents, the promise of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, and yet be a dissident in your own country and fiercely opposed to what the current regime is doing. And I'm going to carry that with me until the day we throw Trump out of office.
And we saw 5 other Americans there, didn't we, with that sign? Yeah. Did you? So we saw, and I said, hey, they said, we're from Virginia. And one of them actually lived in Manassas, where I was born, Steve, which was pretty incredible. Mm-hmm. But there was one point where I was standing there, right? We had our team. We had Dean from Canada. We had Jakob, right, from Denmark. We had the Swedish person there interviewing us, right? Then we had Louis from the UK. Steve, we had the UN contingent today.
NATO.
We had NATO in front of the entire actual procession, and I think that's what stood out to me today is that good people around the world came to support Denmark, and the people that were up front were the people that actually were drawn here by what you all did. And I want to thank you for the invite to me. It meant the world to me, what you allowed me to do here. Thank you.
Well, and of course, we had Dean Blundell on this trip,
That's
Canadian.
Dean. That's right.
And we have,
that's what I'm saying, Dean.
we also.
This just got a lot better looking, by the way. Just wanted to point that out.
Man, what a trio there. Three blondes.
Well,
Three blondes,
this is not
just like
blonde,
me.
Steve.
Arctic
Right.
blonde, Steve.
Yeah, that's why.
Canadian forces, 158 killed in action during the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Bruce Springsteen is in Minneapolis playing today. There are hundreds of protests across the country. There are hockey moms with their kids' 3D printers making whistles. There are people bringing food to their neighbors, and all across the country, people are rising up. I write every day, and people will say, "What can I do?" And I'm just going to offer a couple of things. Now, convenience is an important thing, and everybody's busy. Yesterday, I was needing to send a couple of books as gifts, and I had an impulse to I got to get this done, but I didn't do it on Amazon. Don't buy from Amazon. If you have Prime Video, unplug it. If you can't hold yourself back from the next Jack Ryan episode, all right, maybe you should check your commitment level. There are 538 Whole Foods in the country. Every one of them should be boycotted until Trump leaves office. We have tremendous economic power together in the resistance and in the opposition. The battle lines are drawn. On one side stand the patriots, and on the other side stand the seditionists, stand the traitors to the greatest idea in human history, which is America. And though we are not a perfect country, there is perfection in the idea. And that idea is the most brilliant ever put to paper by the mind of man in human history, that all men are created equal and endowed by a creator with inalienable rights that include life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Fascism destroys the pursuit of happiness like an acid. The fascists do not respect human dignity and life. And we've seen them take the lives of Americans who deserve to live long ones because they were good people, not seditionists, not terrorists. And all of us have a right to speak and to pray as we choose and to assemble where we want. We are a free people who are in our homes, protected from a jackboot knocking down the door. We don't have illegal detentions and kidnappings without due process. We don't believe in cruel and unusual punishments. That is not the American creed. And so, in this moment, across the world, people, ordinary people, moms and dads, brothers and sisters, young and old, feel a stirring in their hearts, in their souls. And they know that they're being called to stand up. Franklin Roosevelt in 1936 said that there is a peculiar rhythm throughout history. Some eras are peaceful and others are filled with turmoil. He said, some generations, much is given, but for others, much is expected. And he said in 1936 that this generation has a rendezvous with destiny. And our generation has a rendezvous with destiny. We were all born in a world where we thought we would be a generation that enjoyed the fruits of what had been sacrificed. But now we are called to meet our destiny. And I know that what you guys did over there was important work. And everybody that's listening, know that you can make a difference. You can stand up. You can get engaged. There's 100 different ways, and I implore you, there is nothing that matters more than our country. Don't ask, as John Kennedy said, what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. Nobody's taking their money with them to the next world. Nobody's taking things with them. But at that hour, that great democracy of death that Martin Luther King talked about, when we pass on, we can know that liberty in our country endures for our children and theirs and theirs. And that's what this moment is about. And that's what this trip was about. You all have done an extraordinary job. Your reporting has been compelling. And I know just from watching all of the interviews that you helped fortify faith in America in Denmark, because standing up for Denmark is how we save America. Because we have to make certain that the world remembers that while there is an atrocity in the White House, the American flame that loves freedom has not quite been extinguished yet. And so with that, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Denver. Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Mary. Safe trip back. And everybody, if you're not following the Ken Harbaugh show, it's one of the best things that you can watch on any of these platforms. Follow Denver Riggleman and follow Dean Blundell. Follow the Save America movement. And if you still have some energy left, follow the warning. Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Thanks,
See you, buddy.
Okay.
Still on.